My name is Matt. I work for my own company called Shift Construction. It's a consultancy company. These are a list of my clients. One of those clients is Eleco, who Andrew works for. I work with them on a few different things. Some of these are software companies, some of these are developers, some of them are clients, and some of them are main contractors. The fundamental aspect of what I do is I take complex problems, I boil them down into first principles, and I apply relatively straightforward solutions to those problems, and then we just burn through problems and solve as many as we can for my clients. Andrew?
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Andrew Norrie, I'm Head of Business Development at Elecosoft. So those of you who might not have heard of us, we are a developer of a multitude of software development solutions across the built environment, so across Contech and PropTech. I guess for digital construction, the most popular of those being Astor Power Project, which is a scheduling and planning tool that's used by over 90% of the top contractors in the UK, which means that our products are utilised on upwards of 75% of all UK building projects. So a little bit about why we're here today. So I've worked with Matt for a number of years, as he said, now still at Elecosoft, but also previously in our previous roles at 3D Repo. We've delivered projects for a number of clients across a vast range of projects, looking at things like project control rooms, which is bringing all the data in from site and being able to see what's going on, all the way through to bringing in off-site information, connecting it up to BIM models, be able to track how that's progressing. And one of the things that we've seen as we've gone through that, as we join projects, is that there's always a lot of data shown, and it's always in a dashboard form. And those dashboards are great, really useful to see what's happening in that project at that time, but maybe hide some problems underlying within the project and don't really tell the whole story. So what we find is that visual skill that we're developing really helping us enhance our deeper understanding of the project and what we need to do to improve it? Is it hiding underlying data issues? Is the data there really accurate? Because all it's really telling us is what has happened, not taking us forward to help us make better decisions. So that's what this presentation is going to be about. We're going to be looking at how we can use that data better to inform us not only to know what is happening on our project, but why it's happening and how we can improve that as we move forward. So I'll hand over to Matt now to take us through some of that.
Can you switch over to that side?
Yeah.
So I can continue. Right, okay, so I'm going to introduce you to, part of this is, I'm going to introduce you to a little framework that you can take back. It's a common data analytics framework. So first of all, I want to talk about descriptive analytics. So descriptive analytics is the first stage of a 4-stage process, and this is where a lot of you might find that you get stuck. So descriptive analytics is spending a lot of money on a lot of technology to look at something that's already happened that you can't really make insightful decisions off the back of. And the result of that is that we make reactive, not directive decisions, and dashboards do not equal a story. We are not communicating well up the chain from the lower level junior employees all the way up to the C-suite. We're not telling good stories, and we're not communicating data in a way which allows decisions to be made. So, why do I think we're stuck in this stage? And when we'll go into, hopefully the stage will seem more familiar to you in a little while. I think that, as Andrew mentioned, descriptive analytics, they look nice. We've started hiring people to do them. So a lot of companies, a lot of you guys might have a BI team, and they are delivering dashboards, and for all intents and purposes, it all seems very good. But we're valuing technology over human skills. Those dashboards that we're producing, they are static, so they've been designed, and every month they are producing another set of the dashboard. We've lost the ability to add narrative, to make decisions, to start describing what's happened, diagnosing, predicting, and prescribing.
Yeah.
So being flooded with descriptive data leads to data fatigue. So I see that already. I've got clients that have been working with dashboards for 2 years now. They were sort of consumed by Power BI and everything looked great. But now they're starting to realize they're looking at the same dashboards every month. Their team are creating the same dashboards every month. And over time, they're just not quite paying attention to the dashboards. It's not getting the value. But in a risk-averse business that we live in, everyone is sort of trying to fob the risk off. So as long as I've produced the dashboard and shown you, your inability to make a decision is no longer my problem because I've shown you the dashboard. And that's one of the struggles that we end up seeing. So this framework, these 4 stages of data analytics. We've got descriptive first, so that describes what happens. Then we've got diagnostic. Why did that thing happen? I see a few of you here that were at my workshop earlier, so sorry, this is sucking eggs a little bit. I'm going to go through this again. Then we've got predictive. So assuming these 2 things, assuming we understand why things happen, what will happen next? So a weather report is the most obvious answer. We can see what happened with the weather, and then we start to see what's going to happen next. And then prescriptive is, can a system or a group of people within a system tell us what we should do to mitigate a problematic prediction or be the catalyst to improve the situation? So I'm going to go into detail on descriptive, and hopefully this will be some of the stuff that you recognize from your work if you're looking at dashboards. So one example is project completion rates, cost, safety incidents. The way I describe descriptive is, if you think about it like a mechanic, a descriptive analysis of a situation is the engine is overheating. I've looked at it, the engine is overheating. It's told me nothing about the problem, but I know there's a problem. But it's not giving me any intuition about what I should do. So the great thing is it summarizes the things that have happened. It looks nice, that's obviously another one. And the pitfalls of this is we can mistake visuals for insights. And actually the word insight gets thrown around a lot in the dashboard world, and when you actually look at it, they're not insights, they're just a representation of data. Sorry, I'll just go back one. And so yeah, here, these are probably the sorts of things you're familiar with. You might have a budget, you might have some overdue tasks on a dashboard, you might have cost distribution. A lot of times these are the sort of dashboards that you get out of a software platform or that you build inside Power BI. Diagnostics, that's why did it happen. So back to the mechanics example, my engine is overheating because the coolant is leaking. And that's the point where I would say, me, as a layman, I could tell you my car was overheating, but I need maybe a mechanic to tell me that it's because the cooling's leak. I need to go find a qualified professional to tell me that. So in the construction world, we might look at why are costs rising. We might also look at, here I've got an example with safety observations. So if we understand that the RIDDOR incidents, the level of reportable incidents, goes up as we produce less observations and goes down the more observations we produce, then I can reasonably diagnose that the more observations I encourage my team to do, the fewer incidents I have on site. So it's an education thing. You could do the same with safety, and a lot of time we look at weather like that. So we might say, let's pull in the weather reports, let's look at how productive we were on site, and then we can reasonably diagnose that maybe the weather has an effect on our ability to perform. Which then gives us predictive. So if we know how the weather affects what we do on site, then it stands to reason that we can count on the Met Office and the billions of pounds that they spend predicting the weather to then reasonably predict any problems that we may have going forward. So in our mechanics world, if the leak isn't fixed, the engine will overheat again. So we're not saying what we should do about it, we're just simply saying that over the next week, this is going to continue to get worse. So we need to look at what assumptions we make with our data in that world. And on the next slide, I've got a few examples. I've given this one a special site. So we can look at project progress versus forecast. One of the, I talk about the optimism curve in some of the work I do. And that is, if we've been performing poorly to date, the program needs to accept the fact that we are clearly not very good at delivering on time. So we can't have a sudden inflection to say that we're suddenly going to perform as we expected tomorrow. We need to bake in the thing that we are currently underperforming, and we need to spread that underperformance across all future tasks. And then we've got things like the weather impacts that I was mentioning before. Then we move on to prescriptive. This is the last stage, and this actually came up in the seminar earlier. One of the things that's important to remember here, this doesn't necessarily mean there is a black box machine telling you what you should do. It just simply means that somewhere in your storytelling process, from the data being collected to delivered up the seniority chain or across the breadth of your business, someone should be using their insights to create a prescriptive outcome. So if we increase the level of observations, we will decrease the number of incidents. And someone needs to stand behind that with confidence, which is something we're not always very good at. But that then, the senior leadership team will then have that insight to be able to say, oh, that's the action that I need to take from this. The action that they need to take isn't simply knowing that there's more or less accidents. And that goes all the way through to maybe what we're doing in the program. And one of the challenges here is that it implies that we often need to make sure our data is relevant to what we're trying to do. And then on to storytelling. So this is a little bit of what I've been going into. Insights are useless if they're not understood. And part of what we lose when we focus on dashboards is that routine dashboard that comes out every month that we're sending to our senior leadership team. Let's say the planner has a dashboard that shows them how the program's going. They see a dip. They see an ineffective delivery over time. That same dashboard is then seen by their team leader, who sees the same dip. Even if the planner has understood why that dip existed and it's perfectly reasonable, maybe there was a supply chain issue, but the planner is now wondering why there's a dip. That same chart goes all the way up to the senior leadership team, up here in my little visual of money and gold, and they start to wonder what the dip is for. And all of a sudden you've created a problem because you're communicating the entire data story to people who don't have time or inclination to read it. And really what you need to be doing is each person along this chain, or this could also be the breadth, so this could be your planner communicating with your QS, communicating with your project manager, they need to add content. They need to filter the data. They need to say, yeah, sure, the incidents are going up, but the reason they're going up is because we've started to engage in more dangerous work, or there's a particular subcontractor which we've now fired and they're not coming back. And one of the things that came from our the seminar earlier was, I think we can trick ourselves into thinking that has to be a narrative, prosaic sort of text string, but actually what it could be is just simply labeling up the diagram to say, here's the graph, and this little section, don't worry about that, I know that. Don't worry about that, I know that. This bit, no idea. That's the bit that we need to have a conversation about. So yeah, this sort of represents the challenge we have when we're just showing everyone the same dashboards. And actually what we need is a storytelling device, because what we find is that we have a dashboard and then we have a PowerPoint that goes around that actually sort of supersedes what's in the dashboard, because the PowerPoint has a load of narrative that doesn't exist in the dashboard. And the cost of inaction here is some standard metrics that have been created by some McKinsey student somewhere that tells us how bad this problem really is. But the key one is this 1, 10, £100 prevention correction failure. So if we spend £1 to standardise data entry, we save £10 in hours spent trying to match up reports, which would save us £100 in incorrectly building and then only finding out later. And then another example I used earlier is that there is research to suggest that one metric is the more litigious a project is during the project, actually the better the project performs, because that shows that the people on the project are respecting the contract and they're delivering according to the contract rather than ignoring the contract, and then things come out in the wash and everything ends up worse later. Then in terms of integrated data ecosystems, this is the sort of stuff that big consulting goblins will talk to you about. This is my analogy here. I'm not going to go into detail. It's fairly obvious. If you want to do this stuff, you need to have better systems. You need to start buying some of the software that's here. But also you need to understand this diagnostic, predictive, prescriptive process and understand what you're trying to do and how you do it. Am I doing this slide?
No, this slide is me.
Sorry.
Where's the clicker? Oh. Yeah, so I'm going to go through one of the other key enablers now that follows on from what Matt was just saying, which is that we need to have better data governance behind all of this in order to be able to make it move forward, which obviously means that we need to manage data as a valuable asset, which obviously everyone's saying at this event, but that means more than just dumping all of your data into a data lake and thinking about it later, right? So we need to have a clear vision and strategy for what we're going to be doing with that data, that's backed by frameworks, policies and standards, which everyone, again, this stage has been full of talks about the standards behind how we do data management. But that also needs to be validated further down the line. So enabling humans to check that data or even enter that data is always going to result in some sort of errors. So we need automated processes wherever possible to make sure that our data pipelines are being checked and corrected automatically without the need for human interference. So now what I want to do is go on and look at trying to apply some of this. stuff that Matt's talked about, some real world scenarios. I work for Elecosoft, so we're going to do it with the Elecosoft product in a Elecosoft project. So we're starting construction planning data, which, as I said earlier, Asta being our major product for this show. We'll look at that. So what we found over the years working with our clients is that actually their planning data is very inconsistent, mainly because planners all want to work in different ways. They have their own ways of working, which means a lack of standardization. We're not really governing that from project to project, so we're allowing projects to plan in different ways, create different data sets that can't then be compared or combined or benchmarked against each other very easily. And there's a huge hidden cost to that we don't really recognize, right? Maybe on an individual project it's not, but we're not then taking the lessons learned from project to project because it just doesn't match up. So what we've been doing for the past 5 years is working with a number of our key clients to develop out a process using a tool called Asta Vision that standardizes that process and does some of what I was saying before of applying standards, but also checking them and automating them to make sure that the data the planners are creating is consistent across the projects that they do, and we'll come on to why that's important later. But essentially what Asta Vision does for the planners is standardize all the templates and data libraries that they're using as they plan the project to make sure they're planning in the same ways, but then also offers automated quality checks so that whenever any data is inputted into it, the system is checking against the way that they want it to work and making sure that everything aligns. Yeah. Also, by introducing workflows to have approvals and things like that, we make sure that things are going through right. And what that means is the data that we're producing is a lot more consistent and reusable and accurate. So now we are back to descriptive dashboards. But what that does mean is that we can then get dashboards out that are consistent across our projects. This is a portfolio level view of a load of our projects all together in one dashboard. But then we dig down and we can also get quality checks across the data. So this is now a dashboard that's checking the quality of the data within our schedules across our projects to show us where we need to go and take that corrective action. And then of course we can dig down into individual projects, and then because we've got it all done in the same way and standardized, we can also benchmark across those projects and see easily how they're performing. But still all just the descriptive stuff we were talking about, just done really well. The really clever part comes when we do start to look into the stuff that Matt was saying before, in how do we move beyond the descriptive dashboard. And to do that with Asta Vision, what we do is supply really open ways of accessing that data to users so they can then combine it with other data sets. So in a diagnostic sense, our users are then taking data out of Vision, which is now really well structured, and combining it with their cost and site data to be able to tell them why delays are happening, not just where they're happening, so that we can then use those lessons learned as we move on to further projects. With predictive, we can then combine that historical data with things like weather feeds, and we work with companies like eHab to be able to do that and give forecast delays and look at the likelihood of weather impacting our projects. And then finally with prescriptive, we can then start to create systems that can tell us how we would make changes to that project based on the information that we're getting from the forecasts that we're creating. So that's looking at the planning side. Look at other stuff that we do, because it doesn't just apply to construction, right? So within Elecosoft we have two other products. Shire Systems is used as an asset management system, or a CMMS, and to manage assets, look at maintenance schedules, inventory management. And then we have Icon Systems, which is used mainly in retail, but retail construction clients like Boots and Asda to manage their design specifications and what, at a very early stage, what products they're putting into their builds. So obviously both of those systems can then be connected up to dashboards and do the descriptive stuff we spoke about earlier. But again, the really interesting bit comes when we combine systems together to be able to give us insights. So in this case, if we can take maintenance data from Shire Systems and combine it with the material specifications from Icon, that can then start to tell us why assets are failing, or where there might be a high cost of carbon to that maintenance. We can then take that a step further and integrate that data with embodied carbon data to then forecast the life cycle of that object and maybe make improvements to it. Or go even further and start to use prescriptive to do targeted decarbonisation of our assets across our whole project portfolio. So I guess the summary that we've got for you guys is we think the first thing is get the foundations right. All the good analytics start with good data. Accuracy and consistency are kind of non-negotiable if we want to progress beyond descriptive, and I think a lot of us are probably stuck in descriptive just because the data has been created for that purpose and not really curated in the way that it can be used to move forward. Also, let's try and move beyond the visuals. Dashboards aren't the destination, and there's a danger that we kind of think sometimes they are, that's all we can do with data is visualize it and show it to people and not look at how we can use it further down the line within other systems. And build an integrated system, so ditch the silos, make sure that everything that you do is driven by APIs and things can be connected using middleware, and do that yourself, I think is my key point. Don't rely on big vendors to come in and build all of this for you and get a fully connected system. Even within Elecosoft, our theory is we will serve up your data to you in a really accessible way. It's up to you to then connect it in a way that makes sense for your business and apply your business logic to it. And yeah, I guess my final point, and Matt will expand on it, is just get started and start playing with stuff. Like there's loads of tools out there to start connecting data.
Yeah, so the like Andrew said, the descriptive can be owned by a software vendor. The other stages, the later stages, really need to be owned by you as a business. And what we've established is that Power BI, that we've all become a little bit too accustomed to, can't really finish that. So I want to leave you with the idea that if you wanted to start learning Python and this platform called Streamlit, which I personally believe will be the successor to what we use Power BI for today, it's open source, so it's free to use. And Replit is a really good AI platform that will let you build Streamlit tools really quickly. I would just say, play around with those. I learned Python 10 years ago and it was painful. You can learn Python today and it's easy because you can just ask an AI whenever you get stuck. So you can build this stuff really quickly, and if you still can't build it, then you can call me. You can call Andrew too, but I would prefer if you call me. Yeah, so I would say this isn't that hard, and then the other thing I would recommend is, with that descriptive, diagnostic, predictive and prescriptive framework, go take a look at the dashboards and the data that you produce at work, look at them with that framework, and look at each one, look at every visual, and ask yourself, what level am I getting, and should I be getting more, and could I combine this data to get there?